Okay, sir. I believe we're going now. So,
Okay,
how are you doing there, buddy?
I am fine. How are you?
And who the hell are you, sir? For those who want to know.
Don't regret that. I'm Scott Mackie. I'm the current world champion. I'm on the design team. I've been in the playtesting since about B5, I think. It's hard to tell because Brian got put in first, but when Brian did it, he just dragged us all into it anyway. So we were doing it all along, officially or unofficially. And that's the whole reason we all got into the design team is how he broke Mr. Perfect back in Gen Con. I can't remember what year that was.
Sure.
But it was basically, he built the deck, I brought the deck. If I remembered how to play the deck better, I would have probably won that year. But I kept forgetting that his remove from game pile was like a dumpster for him, or it was back then. And I kept forgetting, it's like, son of a bitch, I could have spammed him when we were doing until it actually hit. And you forget those little silly things, especially when you really played the deck 5 or 6 times. And back then, there was more games going on, so it was more play now. Now, 5 or 6 times is like a lot. And you're like, oh, wow, now I'm really familiar with the thing.
Do you also think that maybe because there's so much text on virtual, I've seen that complain a lot with people talking about how there's too much text, but I'd like to show them some old comic images cards that have a lot of text too. But
yeah, I have any of those sitting around here.
Do you think that there's just too much to remember?
No, because it's just you got to get used to it. Even a blank deck, has stuff where you have to remember stuff, and you're playing old blank cards, drawing a blank. You got to remember drawing a blank's effects. Sometimes It's just a moving parts thing, and it's just a familiarity thing, and it's like anything else. And you can't exactly put the pads on and be a goalie the first time.
Sure.
You just got to get out there and learn how your body moves and how you can handle this and how you do that. It's just like that with anything else. You just don't automatically fall out there no matter how autopilot the deck is and actually run it without screwing it up a couple times, and that's how you really learn it.
Because some decks have a lot of moving parts going to it. It's like that's really hard to keep track of all the moving parts, not only for yourself, for your own deck.
Yes.
But then your opponent, depending on how many moving parts they've got going on, and remembering what they do as well.
Yes, the classic one I always love to forget is the throwback Vince GRA of making them overturn 2 and they play an action. That gets forgotten a lot, especially when it's a can't be responded to action or whatever. And it's like, or nowadays people don't play a lot of actions anyway.
How do you feel about cards with no response? You cannot be responded to.
I'm okay with them in limited use because there are certain cards a deck needs, and if it needs it so much, it should get a way to get it to play it without having to deal with the consequence of not having it. But unfortunately, you cannot be reversals like that. But then so much shit became irreversible that we had to do something to deal with the irreversibles. I'd rather keep it as the atom bomb that's there when you need it, but not overuse it, so we can use it for that one thing that you need it for, and that's about it. If that makes sense. That
makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're currently on the development team. Is this your first? Is V11 going to be like your first full time on development, or you've been on development since virtual?
I've been on development before Eric took over.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember when it was, but I think it was when Creed cleaned it up.
Okay. So actually, you're from the old regimes like that. How many people are on?
Me and Brian are like the only holdovers, I think.
Really? Oh, really?
The only full-time holdovers. Creed still does stuff, but Nate still occasionally.
I mean, I peek in every once in a while too, because I'm still on that part of that thing too. But I peek in every once in a while, kind of try to keep myself up to date. But it's just a lot of stuff. Life interferes,
Yes, it's fitting though. Actually, we said this about forgetting effects and things. Well, I was testing Adam Cole against Asuka, and it's fitting since they released Adam Cole's stuff today and Adam Cole's ability. And we talk about forgetting things. He plays Asuka lock on me, and me, like a moron, forgets that I can use Cole's ability and just sloppy it and lose the game. And then after we shuffle the decks, he put it away. I'm like, motherfucker. One time I could use his goddamn ability, and I forget to use it.
That's all about play, though. And, it's, trying to remember your own decks like that. It's really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's sitting right. But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just need to play it enough times to make that stupid mistake that makes it sit in your brain forever, so you never forget it again.
How did you end up on the play testing?
It was actually through that Mr. Perfect deck. because they saw this deck. Like, wow, this is really good. And I'm like, well, Brian made it, and I was taking no credit for it whatsoever because, like I said, I don't have the ego about this kind of shit. And I was just saying, well, this is all Brian's. I just drove it. And that got him on the the playtesting team. And when he got him on, it's like, well, I'm testing with him anyway. We might as well use him. And it was me and Anstead and Steve LaFlame and a couple other people. But those are the primary ones. And then we started using the Allentown guys too. We still use the Allentown guys, but that's how it became. And we started from there. And once you start getting in there and you start making useful input, you get listened to a little more and so forth and so on. And it just kind of grows from that.
Well, before we get into your Gen Con experience and then you becoming world champion for 2019, don't you feel like most people who play in these competitive games now, especially for world championships, are all playtesters? In some level, aren't they not?
In essence, yes, because it becomes those are the most dedicated people still to playing the game. It's like if you care enough to be around this game, you care enough to drive halfway across the country to go do it, you kind of deserve to have a little bit of say in what the hell is going on with it.
Sure.
So it's not as much that it's an inner circle kind of thing.
It almost feels that way. It feels like an inner circle almost.
It can feel like an inner circle thing, but it's more because those are the people that have, I don't think anybody at this point travels more to play Royal than I do. I mean, that year I went to Ontario. I go to Allentown once a month, which is 75 miles from my house. I went to Indianapolis. That's more traveling than most people do in their lives for Ordeal. I did it in a year. So it's just one of those things that I will go out of my way to go do this because I like playing this game and I still enjoy it. And it keeps it different. And there's only so many times you can sit here and play an Octagon deck here and then play a real deck here and go against each other. Not that it dries up, but you're playing against yourself and you only have your own things you like to do, and you need to see something else from somebody else that does something else to make you realize that what you're doing isn't as good as you think it is. Are
you playing a lot online these days?
Somewhat, yes. I mean, real life, and you've read my Facebook posts, so you know what the work stuff does.
Sure. Yeah.
And there just becomes a point where it's like you put the kids in bed at 9:30 and you're like, I'm going to go sit downstairs and watch old wrestling and turn my brain off.
Yeah. Well, wrestling to turn your brain off like that. So,
yes, especially old world class. It's so bad.
Outside of Gen Con, before we get to Gen Con, how long have you been playing?
Oh my God. My first deck was Booker T. Was what, Mania?
That's Mania, I think.
Yeah, so it was around Mania SS1. I can't remember exactly when because Brian and his girlfriend at the time dropped in my house and they put this deck in front of me. And the side story I have to give behind this was first, a whole bunch of years before, to put it in, I don't remember the year, but it was actually the day of the fake spike game and the Jets-Dolphins game. If you remember that. It devastated a lot of Jet fans. It made me really happy. But that same day, we went to a Star Trek convention. And we're walking around and we start hearing this weird sounds coming from the other side of the room. And I follow and I follow and I follow and I get closer to it. It turns out it was two grown adults, and this cosplay wasn't a thing at this time. And they're dressed in full Klingon, playing Magic the Gathering in Klingon. I'm like, holy shit, even for me, that's a little too weird. And it kind of put the stigma in my head about card games. And when Brian came in and he dropped this Royal deck in front of me, he deliberately picked Booker T because he knows I like Booker T. And I'm like, this shit ain't like Magic, right? There's going to be nobody playing Klingon in this, right? Once he assured me it wasn't, we started playing and we got a feel for it. And just like everybody's made our silly play mistakes then too. When we'd overturn elbows, we'd take the 2 damage. So, it's just those things you just don't know any better. It's like I said,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. And we grew from there and we started to like it and we started building competitive decks, and it kind of went from there. It was a store in Westfield, New Jersey. I can't remember the name of it. And then it went to Dark Tower, and that's where your first kind of sip of competitive came from, and dealing with those people there too.
How many people show for that?
Oh my God. It used to be like, maybe in the 50s or more.
Wow.
That was a big in its day. That was probably one of the big, that and Neutral Ground.
Yeah.
Were the 2 big stores in the area. And Neutral Ground was about, I think Neutral Ground was once a month, but we didn't always go all the time because it's a pain in the ass to get to the city. That New Jersey train, while it runs great, it ain't cheap. And then you got to walk around, and it just wasn't worth it. It was easier to drive to Denville. Kind of like the reason I became a Devils fan instead of a Rangers fan. It was easier to drive to the Meadowlands and take 3 trains to the Garden. But
So
that was
are you playing in any type of like qualifying events like that? I'm assuming they had them there at Dark Tower.
yes. They didn't have a dark tower. They actually had a neutral ground. I guess
Oh,
Baron like the whole New York City thing behind it.
sure.
The New York qualifiers are always neutral ground. That's the one Anstet one where he ended up going out to WrestleMania 21, which Brian went with them, which is where you won that Triple H card we were talking about before.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we've done those. He won that one. That was actually the same year I played Steve Rusk and forgot that he couldn't pack Duchess until after the match. And with son of a bitch, and lo and behold, what happens next? Steve Rusk plays Mike Anstead. You're disqualified. Thanks, Mike. And that was, we had our big tournaments there. We went to Toronto. I went to Dallas for one or two because I actually had a girlfriend in Dallas at the time, and it was a good reason to go argue with her while I went down there. Where else? I used to do Origins. I did Gen Con back in the original day too. Where else have I gone? I think that's about it. That's still a lot.
So what was your first Gen Con that you went to? It's like that. Like what kind of experience did you have playing Raw Deal at your first Gen Con?
It was those were back when they had the two big qualifiers and they had the side pots. I'm trying to remember when it was. I remember Revo 3, but I might have went before Revo 3 also. But I specifically remember Revo 3 because that was the pods that year. Okay. I remember because I have like 50,000 HBK starters from those. So I remember those, and I don't remember. I mean, I remember Baron eating a giant pizza and going, "Oh, that was a snack." I'm like, but there wasn't a lot because I guess it was more of an absorption mode, and it wasn't like I was trying to get a feel for everything, and I didn't actually find individual things. Or you're trying to, you go to a new area, it's like, is that place good, or is this here? Let me try this. Do I want to be near the hotel? It was more of a learning the town. Now I know the place, like, since I go every year. Like, all right, I know I go to this hotel. I know I can eat here. I can eat there in the morning. And I know it now. So now it's more, I feel weird not going this year.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of people who are missing going, period, but not for Raw Deal purposes like that. But
yeah.
That will then actually segue to let's go talk about 2019. Because I noticed a trend in Raw Deal World Championships getting less and less people every year.
Yeah.
Just because I prize supported Gen Con every year for about 10 years. And 2019 is the year I took off.
Yes.
Couple of things, because 2019 seemed to be like a mystery year to a lot of people. There aren't a whole lot of reports about it. There aren't a whole lot of write-ups about it. There's not a whole lot of anything going on. There's only 4 people playing, correct?
Yes. That's why I kind of self-deprecate. It's like, I won the most irrelevant championship in history.
Well, I don't know about that. I just think that it's if you actually think about it, if you saw or even listened to, I just talked with Mike Canoe, who's the very first ever Raw Deal champion. Again, only 4 people.
Oh, wow.
For the first 2 years, only 4 people.
Wow, they were qualifiers still.
They're all qualifiers. So you had to have 4 different qualifiers to get you in, which was all new to me. I didn't know that about the first 2 years of Raw Deal.
How many people at the qualifiers? I guess we wouldn't know that.
He's at one event alone, he said there was over 100 people that he had to go and compete against.
That sounds more about right for what the game was. Because the neutral grounds, we had like 190 once in a neutral ground qualifier.
Wow.
And it was like mid-July and the air conditioning wasn't working.
That's even worse.
Just what you want, a bunch of gamers stuck in a room that's too small and half of them.
Yeah, a bunch of smelly gamers who smell already before they get there, and now they're.
and all I said was, thank God I lived in Staten Island for 15 years and I had no sense of smell because the dumps ruined it on me.
Burned your olfactory system out.
Exactly.
So 2019, do you have any idea how many people were going to be showing up before you showed up?
I thought it was going to be in the 6 to 8 range. I was hoping it was going to be similar to the NAC, which got about 15. And that was also kind of telling, too. It's like, we have our own standalone event that you're not dealing with convention prices, and people are a little more willing to come out.
Yeah, I think that says something, by the way. But I think that was a big turning point for World Championships. Personally, I don't give a shit where World Championships is being held at, as long as there's numbers showing up. I've always been happy to prize support. I think it's been shown over the years how much I've prize supported and what I've given away over the years.
Yes. Like the
So
Nakamura thing that's in the other room.
I don't have any problems in doing that. I just thought that after 10 years of prize supporting and seeing the numbers go down year after year, I thought that 2019, I had my gut told me, and I was right, that it was going to be a very low turnout. And it was just like, why don't you just go ahead and tell me the 4 people are going to show up. I'll send you what you guys want. You divide amongst yourselves and call it a day. And I just thought that,
In defense, though, we did have a new player.
Really? Of the 4 people, it was a new player?
Yeah, it was me, Brian Mitch, and this guy, Daryl from Maryland.
Really? I didn't know that.
Brother, I can't remember that. Yeah. So there was a new guy. And that was actually one of the things, and that's how we got the proxy rule to pass. Because he couldn't have played without the proxies.
Gotcha.
So we don't give a shit. We'll let him play the proxies, because why?
Yeah.
I'm better than you. Shouldn't be. I have this card that you can't get. And I've openly felt that ever since the game went virtual.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we've gone more pro proxy because of that. And
which it should be that way. It really should be. I mean, obviously, as a seller for VelaCards, as a seller, I want the original stuff to hold value. Obviously, if you're going to go out and proxy a Revolution of the Mind or get the FAO or something like that, or even a Jimmy Hart's like that, by all means, go ahead. But it should be something completely different. But I think the value should still be held high for comic images stuff. And so I like that virtual does its best to make sure that there's still some value in that old stuff as well.
Yes. But still evolving the game to the point, like, instead of Jimmy Hart, now you have legendary defense.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you have a way to, you have something that I personally think is better than Jimmy Hart.
Sure. Sometimes people might think it's better. It might work out better for them. Who knows? It's interesting that somebody else showed up like that because, again, there's been no reports for it. So I have no idea what the hell happened in 2019. Since we're talking about prize a little bit, so was there any prize support?
There was some. I wish I had it. I have it downstairs. I could probably go run and get it.
That's all right.
But, yeah. One of the guy's kids made these little cards that are really kind of hilarious. It said "Good job" or "You won." It was kind of cute. It was funny, and the kid wanted to do something. And then Mitch also had those proxy those like Roy Deal cards where they actually said NXT champion or world champion or any of those. I have a bunch of those downstairs.
Yeah.
I just brought those up with me. Those were kind of neat, but that was really about it. And at that point too, I mean, maybe I'm just weird about it. It's like I've always been like this with SIGs and whatever. It's like I don't care what the signature does. I want to know what the card does.
Correct.
You could put the greatest person. You could put Ric Flair on that signature. If I can't use it in my deck, I'm like, okay. And I've always been like that. I've never been a big autograph hound. I guess because I got it on my system during my hockey fan days.
Sure.
And it was just more I care more about the functionality. Like Steve Rusk tried that with some of the SRG thing. It's like, this is a Kenny Omega signature. I'm like, well, first of all, I can't stand Kenny Omega. But the card isn't as good as the one over there that Mr. Nobody has that actually would do me more good. I'd rather have that one. I practicality first.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wondered from someone who's actually, like I said, prize support for so long, I've always wondered what people care about. We've had this conversation before. I think Drew and I have had this conversation. Just wondering what do people care about when it comes to prize support for Raw Deal. If because people are still having events. I know Luke Lash having some great stuff. He's doing some great work out there.
Yes. I was gonna get up to that this year too.
And I've name dropped him several times only because he's the only person I know out there who's really running some major cool events or did in the past in the last couple of years.
Yes. Kirk did too. I
don't know anybody else who's actually putting out good events out there who's running them. I know there's that one that was happened. I don't know who ran it at FunkoCon or something like that.
Yes, that Mitch was involved somewhere. I don't know who exactly started it, but I can't remember who organized it.
Yeah, I just
I remember looking at it and going, that's about 2 hours too far for me at this point.
I heard it was a good turnout.
Yeah, it was. It was very similar to North American turnout.
Okay.
I think they were both around 15.
Okay.
And again, it goes to show that people will travel. They just didn't want to pay the convention prices, or the convention hotel prices, or
yeah. If you can have I tried in the West Coast. I tried doing that at the Wrestling Guy store in Los Angeles, where there's no, obviously no fee to get. No cover to get in. Everything we've ever run in SoCal, starting with the Adam Christ Memorial tournaments, was always about raising money for cancer research. And so all the money went to that because for almost every event, I think, I can't think of any event that we've held Well, I take that back. We used to run monthly events too, and I took all that money that was brought in, and I used it for printing costs because I was printing all of the virtual stuff for
Virtual
everybody to have.
Yeah.
So, and I spent all my time sitting there glue sticking paper to, actual raw deal cards all the time. So,
I remember those versions of the cards.
long before there was pro printing days. But so 2019, I mean, what formatting do you guys have? This is they got rid of all access, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, which needed to go because
it needed to go. It's a broken pile of shit.
Yeah, it's too bulky.
Yeah, too bulky for sure. So you guys are running basically Virtual Classic and Virtual Evolution.
Which the other perk of that too is you basically spend all this time and this effort to build the deck, and when it was 3 formats, you used it once, maybe twice.
Correct.
So you can say what you want, you can have that deck, and all of a sudden you're playing that one bad matchup, and that whole deck became useless. And it's like all the stuff you did just goes right out the window. It's kind of not worth it. By having 2 formats, you at least guaranteed yourself to play each deck twice.
Correct.
And it gave you a better chance to actually show that your deck was good instead of just getting unlucky and having the one person, running into the Hell in a Cell Undertaker when you're Kevin Owens and it even squashes a rival, which happened to me the year before. And it just kind of helped you have more of a idea of how good the deck really was.
So why don't you walk me through what happened for 2019? Like you get there. When did World start and how did it go?
We got there about whatever the normal time was. We got there and we realized it was 4 people, and we kind of said at this point, why don't we just have everybody play everybody, and you could do 2 out of. And that's what we did. We did everybody played everybody, and at 2 out of 3, so you were guaranteed a Rebel game, you were guaranteed a Classic game.
Okay.
And then we did a D20 roll for the 3rd game. And it's amazing how I have a very bad habit of being very unlucky in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But yet every dice roll I got that one, I either won the tiebreaker or I got Rebel as the 3rd format, which was my Rebel Shield deck, which didn't lose the entire day. And it didn't even come close to losing the entire day because the tag moves were overpowered. And they also had the nice perk of that they're when you play a tag move with them, it doesn't do any damage. So you can hit me with Triple H's sledge and I don't give a shit because, oh yeah, you got 24-2, but it doesn't hurt me. Except Roman Reigns. Wow. Which actually, this is another story about that too, is my stepkids. Their father got them a Roman Reigns figure. And this actually goes into the whole thing here. And every day I would do something nasty to the thing. I'd like have the AJ Styles thing, hold it over the garbage can, or I pile stuff on top of it. I had them in the Ronda Rousey figure, like dropping elbows on him. I'd leave him in that. A cool beat up Roman Reigns day.
I'd have all the female wrestlers just putting the beat down on him.
And it became a thing, and it drove them nuts. But it was kind of funny, and it was just one of those little things I did to twerk them. And every day I would do this. And then I played Brian in the last game, and Brian plays a Colossal against Revolution Shield. So guess what? Roman Spear won me the world championship. And I had to tell them that. And they're like, does that mean you're going to stop beating up Roman now? I'm like, no.
No.
No, in fact, there's 2 padlocks on him in the other
I'd be
room.
like, he owed me.
It was like, no, it was just poetic irony, but I'll take it. And that's pretty much what happened. I kind of treaded water in Classic because Samoa Joe wasn't I wouldn't say it wasn't as good, but that Kevin Nash thing was a pile of solitaire. And that game with Brian became one of our playtesting sessions at home where he was playing something ridiculous and broken that needed to be toned down. And I was just sitting there waiting for him to finish on the other end, not being able to do anything. And that was that one game. Mitch did something with Dude Love and Counterproductive Ambitions, I think it was, where you'd play a move, he'd pop a move out of he'd pop the love handle, I think it is, the one that came only from Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
He'd pop that if it was a grapple or submission, use his ability to pick and play the next turn. So you were kind of locked by that. And the other guy was down, I think it was Daryl or I can't remember. They're brothers and they have very similar names and they're going to this, but I'm sorry, brain fart, and I don't want to look it up on Facebook because I don't do it right now. And he played the Brood, and of course the Brood takes away the chain that Samoa Joe makes everything. So it became, I did okay. I won the one game. I beat the Brood with Joe, and then I lost to Brian with Nash, and then I lost to Mitch with Dude Love, but I won all the Rebel games.
So Rebel's what saved your ass.
Yes. Which is, again, more of the irony. Nobody wanted to play Rebel, and nobody wants to be Rebel. The one guy who took the effort to make sure he had a good Rebel deck ends up winning the whole damn thing.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, hey, And I know my Ric Flair Revo deck helped Drew out a couple years.
Oh, until I ran into Sandman.
Of course. Well, I mean, it took about 3 years for people to figure that out.
No, actually, it was the second year I was out there. I took it down with Sandman.
Well, I think that might have been his third year running it.
Maybe I missed a year. But I know the second year I came in and he was like, "Oh, he's a superstar value of 9. Ooh, I like this. I'm gonna throw every mean in the book at you now."
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
And to make it even worse, I remember that he drew the flare punch, but I drew the ECW reversal. So he went to play the flare punch, and I still. I seem to have very good fortune against Drew.
I on the other hand, have not. Outside of, I've had a couple of decks that he seems to be able to pilot much better than I can pilot it. But,
I heard he mentioned the Molina Road Warriors story on here.
Yep. That and the Ric Flair, Rev deck was what I built, and then he took my Christy Hemme deck and tweaked it a bit to make it pretty beat
She's
down.
pretty obnoxious. Yeah, and especially before old school wrestling match, you could run a no maneuver Christie and just drive people insane.
Correct, absolutely, yes. And she had to be toned down anyway. It's like that, but
Yes.
So you've been going. How many years have you been going to Gen Con? Because I mean, it seems like every time, like the one year I showed up, I think you were in contention like that. This could be Scott's year. It's like that. You and Scott Hewlett.
They always said that, and I always said no, leave me alone.
Well, every time I've always heard your name and Scott Hewlett's name always mentions like that. So to see you guys in back-to-back years wins like that, one is it's cool to see that because you guys kept coming. It's like that every year. It's like that. I mean, from the very first World Championship you went, how did you place, and how did you place going each year going up to your championship?
Oh God, I'm trying to remember how many years.
Did you kind of go in waves? Did you get better each year? And
I think it was more of I went up and then I dipped, and then I got the Revo wave from the last one. I think I was a lot of it too. It was a lot of times the Revo format just got kind of done third, and especially when you did it in the 4 to 5 rounds, it was classic all access Rev.
Mm-hmm.
Classic, and then we usually cut off, and you didn't play your other decks again. And usually those decks were my better. My Road Warriors All Access deck was still pretty good, and you played it once, and that was about it. And it was always the classic deck that I was always a little bit behind on, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I didn't always have the right one, and that was the one that always played more, and it always seemed to kind of catch you in that. And this was the one year where it didn't happen that way, and it actually worked out. Was last year. Because it just happened to be, oh, good, look, more Revo. Yay, more Shield. I'm okay with this. Maybe I should have played the regular Shield.
Well, in your opinion, why do you think Revo gets such a bad flack?
Because we were sold a false bill of goods when it first came out. If we hadn't been flat out lied to and said that it wasn't compatible, and if it was treated as its own game, I think people would have liked it a lot more.
But I never understood that, because just treat it like its own game.
Yeah. But it wasn't, and it was presented as completely compatible. And you remember I think it
was, and it wasn't. I think if as a player, you're not forced to say, "Oh, well, Revolution is part of the entire world of raw deals." Like I have to play it with all my. No, you don't. Play it as Revolution and shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that's what it should have been. And you know what? If Revolution was supposed to be compatible like it was, why the hell weren't they strike, grapples, and submissions?
Correct.
And actions? That would have been a big. If you wanted to make it compatible, make it compatible. But if you didn't want to make it compatible, you made it something different. And
it was a complete relaunch. Yes. That still had compatibility to it. It was very difficult though, because you had to now have all these other maneuver types you had to take in count of. But I think had a Revolution 4 and 5 come out, that would have been corrected. I think the path was on the right way with Revolution 3. Revolution 3 was a really good release.
Yes, and even the virtual sets kind of helped with that too.
Of course it did. Well, with Revolution 4, I built I designed about 80% of that.
Yeah, I think I pretty much alone tested Revolution 5.
Pretty much, because it went to a different direction that I didn't want. One, I lost my playtesting partners I love playing testing with.
Yeah.
So I lost the interest there. And then 2, it just I saw it going in a direction I didn't really care for. So But Revolution 4 for me was mine and my partner's way of trying to correct some things and make it a little bit more compatible with. Me personally, and I said this on record before, I didn't give a shit about All Access. I didn't care how it interacted in All Access. I treated Revolution as Revolution, only its own format, and I didn't care. So I look at it from that standpoint. Now, guys like Creed and other guys looked at it and they're like, "Oh, you can't do that, Tony, because the bigger picture is All Access, and so it has." I'm like, "I don't care. You fix that problem. That's your problem. My problem is just worrying about Revolution."
And that's where it came up on our end, because at least at that point, All Access was still relevant. And we saw a lot. It's like, holy shit, that doesn't go well with this.
No, it doesn't. I mean, Dolph Ziggler was a bad idea. I mean, there was some bad stuff that went in there, so like that. I understand it, but you know, my only claim to my biggest claim to fame for Revolution 4, besides superstar development, which was Carlito and a lot of those guys, I those were all my ideas like that, was the desperate moves. That to me had to be had to happen, and because the one thing about Revolution, it's like classic, but the Revolution was first person to 7F, and you're gonna win. You're in control. Because
and
of
that goes back to why everybody's playing tag teams. Because guess what? All the cores are 0 for 7.
Exactly. So we developed a tag team format for that. It worked out really well too. I think it might be. I think those rules for the tag team format for Revolution might be up on the VelaCards notes section. But we had fine-tuned it for about a year about that's kind of broken. That when we really fine-tuned it, where the tag team format for Revolution was really fun, and it went back and forth like crazy.
Was it like one of those tornado things where you use 2 decks, or was it just
correct? Yeah, you have two different. I mean, two different decks. We both it could be Sandman and Sabu versus Triple H and Ric Flair. And so what we did was we took a lot of the superstars that were built, and then we all had our own decks built. And then we'd roll dice to see who gets to, who would get what deck. So you put them all out, like 5-6 decks of Revolution. Because I was notorious for having 7-8 decks of Revolution built. So I'd have like all the decks built, and you roll and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, boom, that's me. And you roll again at 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you pull out, and then you have like totally randomized. And then you'd have these guys. It just became a lot of fun. So I got to talk with Mike. I think it's up on the VelaCards Facebook page for in the notes section for a Revolution format, but I'll double check.
I'd be curious to see that. Not that anybody plays Revolution anymore, unfortunately.
I think it's a lot of fun for. It got a lot of guys who didn't want.
I shouldn't see that. The other kid started getting Raw Deal interest, and I've been weaning her in with Revolution Cena, and she's been playing him a lot, and she's learning the mechanics that way.
I think the Revolution's a great way to learn mechanics for Raw Deal for especially young and new players.
Yes, because it's less stuff. The card pool is much more limited. You don't have to worry about it. It's like, oh, here's a hold I can't play. I'm going to discard it and draw 2 cards.
Sure.
She can handle that.
Yep.
And then she starts picking up on some of the other stuff I'm doing, and she actually had the grumble about this was too good, and kind of the gamer snarl. That was kind of refreshing to see.
I think Revolution's always gotten a bad raps like that. A lot of guys like to claim that it was it's what killed the game. I highly disagree with that. It was Revolution was the nail in the last nail in the coffin.
SS3 was the big blow because it kicked a lot of people off between the value packs, as they like to call them. And if you're going to give me a thing with a little thing with all the support guys in it, like if you're going to throw back Williams Regal's card, there should be 3 of them in there.
Correct.
If I can use 3, there should be 3 in there. I shouldn't have to go buy 3 of them. Or that nonsense they did, and they actually did this before the neutral ground qualifier. The neutral ground qualifier was SS3 legal. SS3 came out a week beforehand. We happened to get there first, and we actually cockblocked the entire group and bought all the rock ones, so nobody else could get throwback spine buster.
Hey, was it you that bought all the Revolution stuff at Gen Con one year, preventing anybody from buying it?
I don't think so. I would have gladly taken credit for that if I had done it.
There was somebody, I can't remember who it was. Somebody, we had a conversation on a previous episode where somebody at Gen Con found somebody selling Revolution stuff and bought all the Revolution stuff and wouldn't give anybody or trade anybody his Revolution stuff.
Wow. No, I would have remembered that. Maybe that was the year before I started going again. Because I would have remembered something like that, because I would have either admired the assholery of it.
The assholery of it. So you guys play for how did the formatting go again for last year, by the way, again? So you just do a best of 3?
Round round robin, 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it was round 1, I swept Daryl. And then round 2, I split with Mitch, but won. He was Rebo Jericho, and I was Rebo Shield. So not only did I win the dice roll to play Rebo, but I won the dice roll to go first, which got me the tag titles, which got me more cards in my hand.
Gotcha.
So that was Mitch, and then Brian was Nash, which was the solitaire game, which is funny because Scott Hewlett comes over and he's like, "Wow, I love this deck." I'm like, "This is like one of our fucking playtesting sessions where I'm not going to do anything in terms of TV until he's done." And then it was the 2 Shield games, and Brian had played Kofi Kingston in Revolution.
Gotcha.
He misread Kofi's protection that it only worked when he was behind. He thought it worked all the time. If I remember, that's about as much as I remember from it. And Daryl played Revolution Tajiri because we had to build the deck for him, and we wanted to give him something simple that kind of works. It's like, you kiki. Kiki. Or as we used to say about Kyoto, very powerful.
So how many, I mean, you've gone many years to Gen Con to play in world championships like that. You came up short the years before. You finally come up and you win it. How's that feel?
It was weird because it was because it was playing Brian. I play Brian so much. And because it was the round robin, it just ended up working out that our game happened to be the one that would matter because we both split with Mitch. No, Brian beat Mitch, and everybody had beaten Daryl. I can't remember how it worked out, but it mattered that was going to be the deciding contest. And it just was, I guess because it was Brian, it was just weird. It just felt more like a normal game. You know, if it had been somebody else who I don't play all the time, and it might have felt different. And I guess the 4 people thing didn't help either.
Why do you think last year only 4?
I think, and what's weird, we actually had record turnouts for the intro and the cubes. We had more people show up for those. Maybe because it's plug and play. Here's the stuff. This is what you do. And
how many showed up for that?
Oh, we had one with 8. I don't know the intros because I always let somebody else do the intro, and that's when I walk around the convention. And that was always my big holdup. It's like, I'll do whatever you guys want. I'll run whatever events you want. Just don't let me do the intros because I'm not good at them, and I want to be able to walk the convention as usually with their birthday presents.
That was Mitch ran the event though, right?
I think so. It was either Mitch or I can't remember who the other guy was because he didn't play in Worlds. But he was the guy. And somebody's gonna scream at me about this later, but that's all right. It was whoever his kids did the cards.
Okay.
I was talking about. He was the one who might have ran the cubes because I think it was his cube.
Okay.
Yeah, and that had people show up for, and that had I think one was 8, one was 6, another one was 7. Those were good numbers.
Okay.
We did well in those, but it's the actual events itself that there wasn't an interest in. I don't know why. Maybe.
Well, I think aren't a lot of guys playing Super Show now though.
They are, but the times aren't always there. Super Show tend to be later in the day anyway. So we always did, it used to be you'd play the beginning stuff and then you go roll the dice.
Gotcha.
And it just, I don't know, maybe because more of those people that came to do both just did the one. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe because they have their own superstars in that game and they play that more. I guess. I don't know that either. I don't really talk to many of the people who switch to instead of this.
Where do you think going forward? Where do you think World Championship is going forward? We've talked about it in a previous episodes like that, where there's still talk about having a 2020 event, but here we are in September, and there's really not a whole lot of discussion going on about 2020.
I know from my end, I was waiting for the revisions to get done because we can't have it be the same way it was because you could just run the same stuff from last year. The stuff that needed to get fixed needs to be fixed first, and that's being. They're done. They're just going to be out in 2 weeks.
Sure. And
then from there, we can actually start legitimately talking about a world championship. And with the online format, which is the way it should be, because then it would actually be a world champion.
Correct.
We can do that. We can bang that out in a month or 2.
How is that? Are you part of the process of making of having that happen and scheduling and how is that going to play out?
I don't know how the actual tournament would play out. I don't know how we would do the deck list. I don't know how you enforce deck lists. But though at this point of the game, people you'd have to worry about with deck lists don't tend to play it anymore. And most people the people that seem to be left are the honest ones that actually enjoy the game. And it's not about pumping your chest and you're world champion, bro, and all that kind of stupid shit.
Well, I mean, if it's going to be online now, you're going to be opening the door to people from Singapore and Chile and
Yeah.
UK and places that, everywhere. I mean, that wouldn't make the trip to Gen Cons like that. So
Exactly.
it's not going to be the same, 4 or 5 guys.
No, but it'll actually be I don't want to say legitimate tournament because now I sound like I'm thumbing my nose at the whole Gen Con process, but it would
No.
actually be a true world championship where you could play from anywhere and you don't have to go and pay a tournament or anything like that. And I think based on the tournaments we've usually had about 15 to 18 people through the Discord.
Sure.
And that's the perk of the Discord is it's actually making it a lot easier to get people and get them organized. And you can go on Octagon right now and see 3 or 4 Royal games on there.
Okay.
That never happened in Lackey.
Yeah.
So it in that way, that between that and the global bastard, as they like to call it, people are home more and, a little bit of nostalgia kicking. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this game. Oh, it's still around. Oh wait, I can be AJ Styles now. Cool. Yeah. And that's helped it too. And there's been a surge in at least play.
I can tell there's been a surge in sales since April.
Yeah. The member berries are serving us well for once.
Well, I can tell you right now, since early to mid-August, sales have starting to come down to normal levels again. It was pretty all-time 15-year highs, April, May, June, July. And it's going to taper down now to something normal.
Yeah, well, you're starting to somewhat settle into a normal life.
Well, and even the lack of pro printings like that for, especially when it comes to VelaCard stuff, it didn't hurt. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely not.
It's all about, what you have as far as inventory goes like that. So as long as you can maintain inventory, you're still going to have sales. But if they do have a 2020 World Championships like that, does anybody care about prize support? I've got a bunch of stuff. I mean, I think I was showing it to you a little bit off the air. It's like that. I mean, my son got a hold of a lot of this like that, but I mean, I still have a shit ton of backstage signature and autograph cards, it's like that.
I honestly don't know. That would be a good question for the Discord channel, and maybe I can mention that later. Not tonight, because I'm not.
Well, I mean, I have obviously beyond that. I mean, I have tons of signatures on all kinds of formats like that. I mean, for 2018, I was in the process of moving. I got married. I had I had all this stuff going on in my life, and I kind of let time slip away. And normally I'm more prepared. And Drew would take all the prize. I'd meet him and his wife for dinner. And I'd give him all the prize support and he'd fly with it, but he wasn't going, of course. I had to cash in some favors from people saying, hey, can you send some stuff? I had a guy in New Jersey send out like some Sting autograph stuff, some wherever that Japanese guy is, Nakamura. I had a 11 by 14 or whatever it was sent out.
Sting in the other room.
I had that sent out. I had Sting mask signed. I had a lot of things that were kind of, some people did some stuff for me.
Did I ever tell you the story on the Nakamura thing and why I insisted on that from running all the?
No.
Because what happened was, and I would put the kids to bed, and I'm watching SmackDown one night. I guess it was still when it was on Tuesdays or whatever. And I'm sitting there, and there's a Nakamura match on, and I just put the kid to bed. You hear his music, and all of a sudden she runs out of the bedroom. She sees, oh, Nakamura. She starts doing the Nakamura dance. And then the music stops, and she runs back into bed, and she goes right back to bed like nothing ever happened. And for whatever reason, she connected with the whole Nakamura thing. And I saw the thing. I'm like, oh, I remember that. I got to get that. And it's like, you made me do all this shit. I didn't get to run around this convention. I'm taking this. And I kind of stuck my foot down, and I insisted on that. And that was about the only thing I insisted on. That was why, because she had that weird connection where she liked to do the goofy Nakamura dance, and she was supposed to sleep for a half hour.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine who did a private signing with him out in the New York area, New York area. And he said, I'll take care of some stuff for you. Don't worry, because I was kind of running behind on things. I didn't have the normal things I would normally send out. Like I still had action figures, and nobody cares about DVDs anymore. So who cares about that? But
not with the network.
Well, I mean, some people collect them for nostalgia purposes, for the to fill in the holes for their collection. But most of the stuff I submit now was all signed stuff, but I don't think anybody cares about that shit anymore now. So now I think everybody just cares about like having proxy different kind of cards to commemorate their win.
Big, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where it goes forwards like that. I've told a story before about what I was planning on doing for a prize support was kind of bringing it back to old school Comic Images days because of the connections of people that I work with in the industry. I was working on getting tickets for WrestleMania for our grand prize. But that never came about because I made this decision that I don't think this is going to be a year that a lot of people are going to show up. Why would I want to give WrestleMania tickets to like, 5 people?
That would have been just my luck because the idea of sitting through a WrestleMania at this point is such torture. And it would have been this year's anyway, which wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. So in a sense, it was kind of good.
I can barely sit through the damn thing at home at this point.
Well, I mean, these things are not discussing about the products like that as far as like,
it's
bad
kind
or
of
not.
funny.
I haven't watched in years, so I don't care.
I still act. I mean, I have the network for the old stuff, so I still watch some of the new stuff. But it's so bad now. And I guess that I would almost say that's part of the problem, but it really doesn't matter because most of the people who play the card game don't care about the current product.
They don't care about the current product. They'll bitch and complain about stuff like that, or they'll, I don't want anybody new. I want Norman Smiley. That kind of stuff.
Smiley's fine. But actually, that's like that. I've noticed that with this set is
if that guy was half as popular back then as he is right now with Rod Deal players who's claiming they want like that, he'd still be a big star.
That's true. But I mean, even with the new stuff we've brought out in this set, everything's I haven't seen one negative response.
No, I think it's all good stuff. I mean, it's all good quality players. So it's just people outside the iconics like that. I mean, it's the Rod Deal curse still strikes.
Yes, it does.
It's good. It's good stuff.
I'm waiting for it to happen to another group that's coming out. I'll just say that because I don't know when this is coming out. I don't know what they're spoiling next, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm waiting for it to happen to them too.
I just think it's good stuff. It's quality stuff across the board.
I thought the counters were going to get a massive backlash. Because it's so different, and it takes away Revolution of the Mind, or it takes away Legendary Defense, and I thought people.
Yeah, but you guys introduced new cards. Like it's going to change the game, especially on the reversal base. It's going to change the game and how you build a deck right now. So I really think it's exciting stuff. I think.
Yeah, it's also a godsend for no-sell decks. They needed something.
Yes.
And that's huge right there. It's gotten to the point that even when I'm testing, I'm almost exclusively running the counters, and I'm like, just realized 2 or 3 of the decks that we haven't mentioned yet should be better with the Revo, so I had to go find the deck, and it's like, oh, it works much better now. So there is a little bit of balance to it, as opposed to me just thinking everybody's going to pack these cards except like Dolph Ziggler or Braun Strowman because they get perks from the other ones.
So are you, if they decide to run a 2020, going to play in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of have no choice, do I?
You do and you don't. I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah, I know, but not that I wouldn't do it anyway, but you almost feel obliged to kind of defend the thing.
Do you feel that as someone who is now a world champion and you're heavily involved in the play testing like that, do you feel like you might have an unfair advantage against someone else who doesn't? It's okay to be honest.
I'm trying to think of kind of, because testing it means I have to try everything. But I just found that made me a better player because it got me out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
It made me play more blue stuff or more, not the same 12 moves in the deck. It just made you be different and do different things. Like that new Puncher's Chance card. I built a Tank Regal deck now out of that just doesn't die. Because between that and I was playing Lou, I was talking to, we were testing against it, and he kept reversing it, and it basically killed him because he kept reversing all these European uppercuts and overturning 2 and discarding 2 and overturning 2 and discarding 2, and all of a sudden he's got 6 cards left in deck and no hand, and I actually hit one, and he lost. And it was like all I did all game was watch him reverse it, which he shouldn't have done, and it burned himself out. And I would normally not play a deck like that.
Interesting.
So I would say it does because it makes me do different things, but you still need to have the brain to say, this is what this does. I need to do this instead of this is what I like to do and making every deck do that. So in that way, it kind of burns your horizons that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But you get a good grasp of all the new products like that before anybody else really gets to. It's like. Yeah,
but we also try to make it that we don't want to drop it before World. Okay. You know what I mean? We want to have a fair amount of time, like a 2-3 month period before.
Because Virtual 11 is supposed to come out a couple weeks now.
The same time, the revisions. Yeah. I lobby heavily against Virtual 11 being legal for Worlds at this point because it's too new. And like you said, that would be sort of unfair.
Well,
And
if it comes out in 2 weeks, we're still in September.
unless we did it like say Thanksgiving, we started Worlds, then it would be fair. Because then you'd have the
Is there talk about a date for Worlds at all?
nothing yet. I guess we're just trying to make sure we get everything. We don't want to have a no shit moment with B11, so that's been our main focus. That's why I haven't played any of my tournament games lately, because anytime I'm actually playing, I want to make sure this guy's okay, or Robert Roode wasn't too busted, or whatever. Then, spoiler X isn't good or whatever.
Sure.
And just to make sure that's more of the focus at this point, is we want to get this right so we don't have to have the all shit moment next year.
Do you know if they have a plan in place on how to run Worlds? Like, is it going to be cutting, top 8 and all that kind of crap, like normal?
I guess it depends on turnout.
Okay.
If we get 16 people, maybe we'll have a top 6 or 8. You can do that. You can have a top 6.
I think if promoted properly across all platforms and people, pull their heads out of their ass and stop having egos about like, I'm not going to support this person, that person. I think as a community, as a Raw Deal community as a whole, if it promoted across all platforms on all the different social media pages, I think you would probably get a lot of people out there. I think you could probably pull 30 people playing a world championship.
We could. That would be great. And that's one of the things I will say, and this is not a knock on anybody else, but this is Eric's personality fits this better. He is the ideal spokesperson type guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who can go out there and he's like friendly to everybody. And he's people seem to listen and embrace him more when he says something more than a lot of other people when they said stuff about the game.
Well, I mean, you go back even as you can insinuate all you want to someone like a Creed or something like that. I mean, he came off as abrasive.
Trying to do that.
I totally understand. But I mean, he can come off as being abrasive like that. I've had my run-ins with people like Creeds like that. I've had my run-ins with Eric, in a sense. Maybe not directly with him, but I think both are very good for the game. I mean, you can't take away what all the time and effort and energy that someone like Creed's put into the game.
No.
And I think he handed it off to the right person. I think Eric is the right person to do it. And like you said, I think he has a certain kind of charisma about him that really makes it likable. And,
I was going to say likability.
Yeah, and I think that he can be an endorser for the game, an ambassador for the game. I really think he can be. And
probably because he's Canadian.
Probably he's just too damn nice.
He's too damn Canadian.
Next thing you know, we're gonna have Ryan Reynolds out there supporting our games like that, doing.
Oh God. Oh yeah, because Ryan Reynolds would sit there with Deadpool and like they'd have the script revolution and shoot the guy in the head.
That's right. That's right. But I think it's in good hands. I think it's got a good thing going for it. I'm not an online player kind of guy. I've never played I've tried years ago to play in Mackie, was turned off, didn't care. Never decided to go back again. I haven't played Raw Deal forever anyways. I don't care about playing Raw Deal unless it's a cube format. I might be interested in playing that. But I think it's in good hands. I'm interested in seeing what happens with Worlds. I've told guys like Luke who run their events. I've told Eric, if they need any help in prize support, hit me up. If it makes sense, I'd be happy to assist and help out. I'm there if they need it. So I've tried to be, as VelaCards, I've tried to be a very strong supporter of the community as a whole for many years, over a decade, matter of fact. So as much as certain people might piss me off and think that, the world revolves around them and how they think things should be going, I'm still going to be in it to help people and help the game as long as it keeps people interested in wanting to play. Obviously, from a business standpoint, it makes sense for me. It makes sense for someone like a Scott, from Category, and Steve from Carte Blanche. It makes sense for somebody to step up and continue to keep making the game visible and exciting and fun, because we don't have a manufacturer to support us and provide us with stuff.
In a lot of ways, it's a good thing.
In some ways, it is a good thing. In other ways, you're like, well, I don't have anybody out there who can throw in cash, to make for cash prizes or, tickets to an event or this kind of, but, we do what we can to make the community still, it's a very unique community. I've never played other games before, as I've said many times before. I don't have experience with other stuff. So Raw Deal is the only CCG I know. It's a very unique community from my understanding is that people seem to care about it and it's developed friendships.
Even the classic only people, obviously they still care enough about the game to still want to deal with it that way, but I just can't do something that's been the same for 10 10 years
Of
now.
course, yeah, over 10
Yeah.
years. And I think that
Yeah.
people just those guys don't like change. I think they already they're probably the same people who used to bitch and complain when chain was introduced and volley was introduced and heat was introduced. I got to learn all the. I mean, it is what it is, man. Either you evolve or you fall aside.
Volley was a confusing as hell mechanic when it first came out. It's like, well, I'm going to do what from ringside? Why would I want to do that? I don't get those cards back.
Yep. Unless you have some ways to get them back.
Yeah, but back then there weren't many.
There weren't very many at all, no.
Yeah.
But so I think it's exciting to where it's going. It's like that. I don't play. I do get an itch here once in a while to want to play. It's like that, but I don't know if I would enjoy it the same way online as I would in person with somebody. I don't even have any product in my hands. I have nothing in my hands. I don't think
Well, that's the beauty of the online stuff too.
I only have all just these cards I give away.
60 signing appearances.
I got a ton of them. I saw a Vince McMahon one in here. I saw a Vince McMahon signed one. This one I'm going to have to do something with. Like my son you can't really notice it's like that, but it's a Kevin Nash version 2.0 one. It's noticeably bent now from this afternoon. So I got to figure out what to do with
this. Him going to sleep. Now it's one of a kind.
I got to figure out what to do with this thing now. So I'm sure somebody might want it, but it's cool, man. But it's good to see you again. I mean, you and I and Brian went out to dinner one night when I was out in Jersey. What was I doing out there to begin with? Where were we?
You were at a convention with Kevin Nash.
I wasn't I?
Yes. And it's funny, that hotel you went to is no longer there.
Really?
Really. I have customers in the area, and I drove by it, and every time I drive by it, I see it's closed down. I'm like, eh.
Can refresh my memory. Where was that exactly in Jersey?
Jamesburg?
Where?
Jamesburg, maybe?
No, it might have been in Monroeville.
Maybe it was something close to that. I'm trying to remember.
Was it further down? It wasn't up in Parsippany though.
No, it was down south.
Yeah, down south. So I think it was Monroe.
Thomas Davis. Hold on, I have a customer in that town. Monroe Township.
Monroe Township. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
so
that was the old. That was the old Crown Plaza.
Yes, it had an Indian restaurant in it. That's why we went.
Well, it used to be a sports bar restaurant that turned into an Indian restaurant.
And then it turned it out of business.
Oh, it turned out of business. Okay, so it's gone.
The whole thing is gone now. It's for sale signs up everywhere.
I remember that. I was supposed to have Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and Scott Hall didn't show.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that now. And then I went and I had dinner with you and Brian.
Yes.
That was a great burger too, by the way.
Yeah.
That was a great burger.
Every time I go by, it's like, do I remember that burger place is? No. Shit.
No. I don't remember how I even picked that place, but it's
always.
Huh?
You found it.
Someone told me about it. I don't remember
Maybe the front desk told you.
Probably, maybe. But it's always interesting to meet some raw dealers. Like I don't get to meet very many outside of the California play group. So
that's the other perk of traveling too, is you get to experience a different life. And I like my road trips. They're very kind of.
I've always enjoyed them. Now I'm married and I have a 19-month-old, almost going to be 20-month-old son. So like that, I like being home more than I like being traveling. But when I work with a Kurt Angle like that, I have to travel with him. So the last time I met a raw deal player, I think was Scott Hewlett. I met him in Indianapolis at a Days of the Dead convention, and he has the only version of 2.0 backstage autograph session signed by Kurt Angle. So.
Wow.
He showed up with his little backstage shenanigans or podcast team.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
I think it was Heated Shenanigans. Heated Shenanigans.
I think he renamed it, I think.
It's called Heated Shenanigans. Matter of fact, he got back into wrestling now. He's wrestling again.
That's his tag team, I think.
His tag team name is Heated Shenanigans. So I always enjoy talking to Scott. I have a great time talking to him.
Yeah.
He's
in one of my fantasy football leagues, actually.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, I should probably join one year so I can kick all your guys' asses.
Oh, the draft's on Facebook.
So I might have to join one of these years.
We'll bring you in next year.
I stopped playing after I won back-to-back years. I figured I've had enough. Everybody I played with before in fantasy football, when I had a space at a place called Frankenstein Collectible Show in California, go, yeah, you can play. Join. We'll join. I played the $5 a week where you pick the teams that would win.
Oh, DFS.
Yeah, I played that, and then I played in the actual fantasy league too. So I won each year that I played in the $5, and I didn't win the total for the year. I won for points, but I won, I had most wins. I had like 4 wins a year. So then I played the fantasy football leagues like that, and I came in dead last my first year. I came in third or something like that my second year. I came in second my third year, but missed it by 1 fucking point. And then I won the next 2 years. And so every time I like, oh, yeah, you're just lucky. What do you have your daughter pick all your players like that, their favorite colors? I go, which is more embarrassing, that the wrestling guy beat you or that my daughter picked the teams? Fact is, I won, assholes.
That's one of those things too. It's like the less you know, the better off you are at that one.
But I became obsessive with it, the whole thing. I mean, studying weather, temperatures, and it was just ridiculous. So, but I might be intrigued to play against like that, to put the beat down some people.
The Facebook draft itself is half the entertainment too. It's like, no, you can't have the guy got taken 3 rounds ago. Why aren't you paying attention?
Well, one thing I've never done before with fantasy football, which is going way off topic here, is I've never done the actual where I had to participate in a live draft. I've always had the one where the years we play with like Yahoo Sports or something like that. I think we played. Yeah. I would play where it was already like you put in what you liked, it's like that. You ranked everything, it's like that, and then it drafted for you, auto draft.
Those are atrocious. I hate those because I'm so off on my own on those.
Well, and I'll tell you, the year that I won my first championship was the year that Dante Culpepper was a rookie. That tells you how long ago it was.
I actually have a great fantasy football story about that. We had one of my money leagues with my main customer, and Brian was in it. And we brought this friend of mine that I knew from the bar because she watched football with us. And we talked her into going and things. She was all ready. She gets in the door. She goes there, and she finds out because she's a new person, she can't have a keeper. She has a total mental breakdown about this one keeper and decides, I'm not doing this. I walk out the door and she leaves. Like, all right, screw it. We're just going to draft the extra team anyway. We won't do transactions with it. If somebody wants to buy it, they can buy it. This team we drafted as a semi-goof and had no transactions won the goddamn league. And I kept telling her that, and to the point she stopped talking to me. I was like, look at all the stuff you left. You're a genius there. Like, you weren't even smart enough to make those picks. But
even when you got players and teams that are like not playing because of the bye weeks like that, and they're still on the roster, they win.
Oh, it's the worst. Well, yeah, I mean, did we make a single transaction on that team? I don't think we did. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. Sometimes less is more. As opposed to the guy who sits there and, studies. It's like, Tom Brady's only 85% when his socks are halfway rolled up.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's an interesting conversation with you, sir. It's like, it was good to see you again.
You too.
I hope to have you on again. Maybe you'll be a back-to-back champion.
We'll see. I mean, I also want to do this with the whole design team when V11's out. We can talk about some of the stuff that we actually did with that.
I'd love to have you and Eric on like that for an episode where we can talk about V11s like that. I know that I had Creed and Nate on when we talked about V1. And that was a very long and interesting conversation like that. But I'd be very interested in hearing from you guys about all the development process and little behind the scenes crap that went on with that stuff.
Oh yeah, and some of the backstage discussions.
Well, actually, I'll reach out to him too, but you too, because you probably have a much more frequent communication with Eric than I do.
Not at this point. He's got stuff going on.
I'm aware of those like that. Yeah. I did wish him,
yes.
well, and it's like that. So I'll probably reach. It's been a while since I've actually did wish him. I should probably reach out to him again.
I've been kind of letting me too at this point.
I like Eric. I want him to be well. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool, man. Let's talk again. Let's definitely have it so we can talk to you guys again about V11 then.
Yes, that would be probably a good idea. Maybe, the week after everything's released and all that.
Maybe we'll get Brian on.
Yes, definitely.
You talk to him for me and see if he'd be interested in coming on.
Yes, I'll send him a Facebook message once I hang this up.
All right, man. Well,
I'm sure he'll want to do it because I know he's wanted to jump in on one of these too.
Absolutely. Totally, man.
All right.
We'll talk again soon, man.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right.
Get kids asleep.
Well, we are out then, sir. Out.
Yes. All right.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.